He promised miracles and blessings, but his true gift was deception. While the faithful knelt in prayer, he, on the other hand, preyed on their trust, using charms and secrets to get what he wanted. This is the scandalous story of a pastor who turned a holy altar into a stage for corruption. In a bustling city located deep in the heart of Africa lies a church led by Pastor Samuel, a charismatic and eloquent man who has amassed wealth and followers, with most of them being more women than men. People flock to him, desperate for blessings, believing his power is divine. Pastor Samuel preaches a fiery sermon about prosperity and blessings, urging congregation members to sow seeds of faith for financial miracles. Brothers and sisters, the Lord has chosen this ministry to bring miracles into your lives. Sow a seed and watch your problems vanish by the power of God. God's blessings await those who trust in His word. He continues to preach passionately. My dear brethren, sow your seeds today and watch miracles unfold. Pastor Samuel shouts cheerfully. The congregation cheers and shouts, Amen, as baskets filled with money are passed around. One day, while Pastor Samuel was walking through the town, very eloquently, he goes around greeting and chatting with his churchgoers. He meets Mr. and Mrs. Okeke. They had previously divulged their hidden marital problem. Her inability to conceive a child since they got married a decade ago. Hello, Pastor. What a pleasant surprise. You are just the person we wanted to see. We were heading to the church just now. Mr. Okeke cheerfully speaks, having seen the pastor. Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Okeke, the pleasure is all mine actually. I was just about to send for you. We are having a special overnight prayer and worship today evening, starting at 9 p.m. for the special kinds of situations like yours, Mrs. Okeke. Pastor Samuel equally responds cheerful, but with a whisper to avoid the passers-by from hearing. Oh, Pastor, this is amazing news. Honey, let's rush back home and get ready for the service. Mr. Okeke speaks with excitement in his voice. Ah, Mr. Okeke, I hate to disappoint, but this service is only for the afflicted parties. All the other congregants invited are part of the afflicted party as well. We have organized it this way to make sure that the power of the Lord works purposefully. Pastor Samuel speaks with a silent, somewhat hidden smirk on his face, clearly with a hidden agenda. Cut to Pastor Samuel's private chamber, ornately decorated with religious symbols. Mrs. Okeke, a desperate woman in her mid-30s, sits nervously as Pastor Samuel walks in. Mrs. Okeke, I have been praying for your family. The Lord has revealed to me that your womb is closed by spiritual forces. There is a special ritual I must perform to open it. Pastor Samuel smiles reassuringly as he locks the door behind him and draws the curtains shut. Pastor, where is everyone else? I thought this was to be a service with more members. Mrs. Okeke responds with a clueless tone. The ritual is very personal. It involves a union between us so that I can transfer the blessings to you directly. Pastor Samuel, leaning in closer with his voice lowering, don't worry, I have organized this special service just for you. I have prayed for you. I know what I am doing. Don't you want your blessing? Pastor responds, irritated by her words. Mrs. Okeke, very hopeful, I will do anything, Pastor. We have been trying for 10 years. Little did Mrs. Okeke know, Pastor Samuel had no intention of blessing her, but only exploiting her vulnerability at her weakest. Later that night, poor Mrs. Okeke walks out of the Pastor Samuel's office looking sad and in doubt, unsure if what had just happened was worth it. Fast forward, during choir practice. Pastor Samuel observes the choir from his office window. His gaze lingers on the young, very beautiful, fair-skinned woman in the front row. He continues to look on lustfully, with a burning desire that is like a thirst in desperate need of being quenched. Pastor Samuel devises a plan that evening to have his way this time as well. He invites Kioma, the young beauty after choir practice, to his office for a guidance and counseling session. It is late, but Kioma, still clueless, accepts to meet the pastor at that hour. Blindly and naive, she asks her travel companions to go ahead without her. Her fellow choir members think nothing of it and walk back home without her. Kioma, your voice is a gift. The Lord has told me that He wants to use you mightily in this ministry, but you must first receive a special blessing from me. Pastor Samuel speaks softly with a charming smile. Pastor, I am the Lord's faithful servant. I will do whatever it takes. Kioma bashfully responds. After a while, Kioma walks out of Pastor Samuel's office, sad, not sure how to feel. The young woman, like many before her, fell for Pastor Samuel's deceit, believing it was the path to divine favor. Tunde, a young curious altar boy, assigned various chores within the church. One day, while cleaning, he accidentally stumbles on, notices Pastor Samuel disappearing into a hidden passage leading to a small, hidden secret spiritual room behind the pulpit. The door is slightly ajar. Tunde cautiously steps inside and gasps as he sees talismans, animal bones, skulls, charms and dark symbols covering the walls. In the center lies an altar with candles and a mysterious, ancient-looking book. What is this place? So this is where the miracles come from. Tunde whispers to himself in fear. So horrified by what he saw, Tunde remains quiet, not sure what to make of it. Meanwhile, more women in the church continue to come to Pastor Samuel for blessings, but some were already growing increasingly frustrated, having seen no miracles, despite following his every instruction and fulfilling his every demand. One day, as Tunde goes about with his duties around the church, he overhears two women from the congregation confessing tearfully that they never received the miracles promised by Pastor Samuel, despite giving themselves to him. Tunde, deeply troubled by what he saw in the pastor's secret room and what he had just heard, he confides in Sister Ruth, a dedicated church member and leader. Ruth doesn't believe him at first, but notices strange behaviors in Pastor Samuel and the inner circle. Sister Ruth decides to investigate further. She sneaks into the pastor's spiritual room with Tunde and secretly records its contents. The evidence is compelling. Black candles, a large book of incantations, and a section filled with women's photographs, each with a small charm placed beside them. Disturbed by it all, Sister Ruth approaches a few women who had sought blessings but never received miracles. They form a group and start sharing their stories, confirming the pastor's exploitation and misconduct. I thought I was special to him, but it was all lies. Amaka, one of the female church-going congregants, cries helplessly. He promised me wealth and health. I feel so betrayed. Adizi speaks with teary eyes. Realizing the extent of Pastor Samuel's deceitful acts, Sister Ruth encourages the victims to come forward with them. She also decides to involve the media to finally put an end to him. An anonymous whistleblower, Ruth, leaks a video of the spiritual room online, igniting a scandal spreading like wildfire, which rocks the church and the local community. Poor Mrs. Okiki, crying on camera during a news interview. He said it was the only way for me to have a child. I trusted him. He has ruined my marriage. Pastor Samuel is a wicked man. And Tunde the altar boy to the interviewer. All along, Pastor Samuel used his ancestral spirits not for miracles, but to charm the congregation into giving him their wealth and never leave his church for any other. Tunde speaks with regret in his voice. I should have spoken up sooner about my discovery. We trusted him and he betrayed us all. Tunde continues to speak. Tunde's discovery and shared stories spread quickly, prompting even more women who had been deceived to come forward. The whole town was outraged by what was unfolding. The church leaders called for a meeting to try to clear the air. He lied to us. He used God's name to cover his wickedness. Kioma shouts out loud at the brink of madness at the church meeting. That wicked man took my innocence. He has made me unclean. He is indeed a wicked man. Kioma continues to cry. Tensions continue to rise as some members begin to question Pastor Samuel's methods and extravagant lifestyle on top of the recent news of his sexual misconduct with the female congregants. The church is now divided between loyal followers and those who strongly believe something isn't right. The church was thrown into chaos. Once revered as a man of God, Pastor Samuel was now exposed as a fraud and a deceiver. The congregation, heartbroken and furious, demanded justice. One Sunday, a mass protest occurs during a Sunday service where former followers confront Pastor Samuel, demanding the truth. He tries to deny the accusations, but with the evidence and testimonies piling up, he becomes desperate. During the confrontation, the pastor is seen trying to perform a miracle to prove his divine power, but nothing happens. The ancestral spirits he relied on to compel the congregation to love him abandon him, leaving him exposed and powerless. With all the evidence, Pastor Samuel is arrested for fraud, sexual misconduct, and ritual practices. The church is left in disarray. Months pass, and the once loyal congregation begins to heal from the betrayal. Ruth, Tunde, and the entire town find solace in the fact that the truth was uncovered. The women who came forward form a support group to help each other rebuild their lives. Eventually, the church and the town healed from these atrocities. Moral of this story is that true faith and spirituality cannot be bought or manipulated. Deception and exploitation, no matter how cleverly disguised, will ultimately be exposed by the light of truth. If this story about the scandalous acts of the pastor kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We bring you stories that dive deep into the mysteries of life, the struggles of relationships, and the power of the supernatural. Tap the notification bell to stay updated on our latest releases. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of today's twist? And what kind of stories do you want to see next? If you have stayed till this point, thank you. Until next time, stay safe and honest.